at the heart of the act lies two principles, which primarily mean one, protection against sexual harassment, and secondly, the right of a woman to work with dignity. Those are the two basic aspects the entire law is based upon. Now, as schools, what are our duties? So we get it into the three-pointer mechanism, which we like to call the PPR mechanism. PPR stands for protection, prevention, and redressal of sexual harassment. So at school level, we need to protect women against this. We need to prevent this in our institutions, and we need to ensure that there's proper redressal mechanism for the same. So any woman who may be present at your workplace but not employed with you will still fall under this act, right? So this actually widens your operations, your responsibilities. Now, what constitutes as sexual harassment under the act would be compartmentalized into 5 sectors. The first would be contact. When we talk about contact, we are talking about a physical contact which is easily seen by the eye. So this factor is not very difficult to establish. Second, we talk about any demands or requests for sexual advances. Third would be any kind of sexual remarks. Now, this is a very, very difficult part. Right? How do you distinguish between something which is a sexual color and which is not? It is very subjective, plus give a definition of it. Fourth aspect would be showing somebody some sort of porn that would also constitute the act of sexual assault. The act. Fifth would be an unwelcome physical gesture, a remark, and this is the widest of all possible categories.
Although sexual harassment includes physical touch, but every physical touch is not sexual harassment. So there has to be a difference between what constitutes harassment and what constitutes sexual harassment. All actual physical contact does not necessarily constitute sexual harassment. Showing pornography also forms a part of sexual harassment. Not just showing pornography, even keeping obscene screensavers, obscene calendars in the vicinity or in the staff rooms or in the drawers of the teachers may also amount to sexual harassment. Presence of any sexually offensive material demeaning the atmosphere forms part of sexual harassment. Obscene pamphlets, drawing, sketches, drawing figures also forms part of sexual harassment. However, I would also like to explain what does not amount to sexual harassment. So if in a school, 2 employees, a male and a female, indulge in a fight over some petty issues, would it still be called sexual harassment? The answer is no, since there is no sexual behavior involved in it. However, if 2 people get in the fight because one refuses to accept the sexual favors offered by one person, then the same may be termed as sexual harassment. So, internal complaint committee is a permanent body. It is not formed when some complaint is received. It has to be there already. However, the committee may be reconstituted if there is some conflict of interest or for other reason, like for the complainant or the respondent is already a member of the ICC, then the committee may be reconstituted. As per Section 4, ICC shall consist of a presiding officer who shall be women at a senior level. Also, the Act prescribes that minimum of 2 employees, preferably having experience in social work or legal knowledge, and 1 member from NGO committed to the cause of women or a person familiar with the issues relating to sexual harassment. The Act also says that 1/2 of the total members shall be women.
How does a person file a complaint? Which is very important because schools directly will have to monitor this aspect. So let's say some event has happened. Now the timeline to file a complaint is within 3 months, right? Not beyond that. Now let's say there are multiple incidents, and how do you calculate this 3 months? So 3 months have to be calculated from the last reported incident. Now this is generally in a written format, and if the victim, the woman who was been assaulted, is not in a position to give a written complaint, then it will be the school's duty to assist her at that level. Also, for some reason she's not able to file this complaint within 3 months, then it will also be the duty of the school for this to ICC, and if ICC feels that there is a reasonable cause for her dealing, then that can also be done away. So it can be condoned.
The Act gives her 3 months time, which is supposed to be sufficient for a woman to consider all her options and to approach with a written complaint complaint to the ICC committee. However, in certain circumstances, it may not be possible for the complainant to approach the ICC within a 3 months time. In such a case, it is possible that the ICC may extend the time limit for filing a complaint, which cannot be more than 3 months. So, however, such condonation of delay has to be with a valid justification. So ICC may condone such delay after noting down the reason for condoning such delay. Also, ICC does not have suo motu option to take up a complaint. So even if ICC members are aware of the case, the complainant or somebody on her behalf has to approach the ICC and has to file a complaint for ICC to take an action. In some cases, there might be somebody who approaches you with an oral complaint. In that case, ICC must advise the complainant to give a written complaint to the ICC in order for them to proceed. And if there is some illiterate women or somebody who is unable to write, then ICC may also go and assist the women in filing the complaint. Also, can complaint be filed by way of emails? Then yes, the Act only mandates that it has to be writing, and since Information Technology Act already says that email is also a form of written communication, so complaint can be made by way of email. In fact, ICC should endeavors to have their separate email ID for ICC complaint that is to be provided or that is to be available with all the employees in the organization for them to make a written complaint. What is the validity of complaints not filed with the ICC? For example, if an employee of your school, instead of approaching the ICC of your school, the complainant always has the option to approach the police and to file an FIR. If there is already an FIR filed by the complainant against the harasser, against the accused, then does ICC committee have the power to proceed with the inquiry, as already the action has been taken on the behalf of the state? The proceedings under POSH Act are considered civil in nature. It does not take away your right under criminal law. So you can any day approach the police and file the FIR, and can also approach the internal complaint committee and complain about the sexual harassment faced by you. However, unless and until there is an explicit court order that prohibits such a proceeding, the ICC committee should anyways continue with the proceedings against the person accused of harassment.
Now, most important part of the entire act is over here, which talks about the duties of the school, right? So you have to ensure, now they say that you have to ensure that you should be able to provide a safe environment. So you have to, have notice boards wherein you display that, okay, look, this is an offense under so-and-so act, and these are the punishments we can do. And we have a special ICC committee in the school which will be looking after this. So you have to regularly update people about what kind of an offense this is. Then secondly, you can do a lot of seminars and workshops to tell people, to sensitize the teachers, to sensitize the staff and even students not to indulge in these acts, by telling them what are going to be the repercussions and what can be criminal actions involved in this. Then there are orientation programs which form a very important part. Orientation programs are for the committee members. So you need to tell them how do you actually have to go through this entire procedure. The formulation itself doesn't work. You'll have to tell them that this is the procedure you need to follow. These are the factors you have to consider while you're taking or giving out any decisions, any findings, right? Then to facilitate ICC, which means that you provide them facilities that they might be requiring in adjudicating, plus any assistance to the complainant. And in your service rule, you have to treat the sexual offense as an indisciplinary act. It is a misconduct. You'll have to necessarily specify it, right? And there has to be an action. So termination, you may be able to categorize them depending upon the gravity of the offense, but you will have to terminate in your service rules. We then move on to section 15, which talks about compensation. Now, for calculation of compensation by ICC, we have 5 factors, right? So what is the mental trauma that the victim has gone through, any emotional abuse she's gone through, any loss of career opportunities that she's gone through, any medical expenses she's incurred in, getting a treatment for either mental or physical abuse, Then we also have to see the income and the financial status of the respondent, who is the accused person in this case. So if he is capable of giving more, ICC can definitely impose a higher penalty on him, right? And then they see the feasibility. Let's say ICC imposes a certain set of payment rules. That okay, this is the amount to pay, so they can also divide it into installments, and they can have it paid from the accused person to the complainant.
So once the inquiry has been conducted, a report has to be prepared within 10 days of conclusion of the inquiry, and the action must be taken by the employer within 60 days time. Otherwise, the employer are liable to be penalized under Section 26 of the Act, which may extend to 50,000. Section 13(4) of the Act makes it mandatory for the employer to comply with the recommendation of ICC, so it cannot deviate from the recommendations of the ICC. Also, once the inquiry has been made, inquiry report must be made available to both the parties, including the complainant and the person accused of harassment. Another thing that has to be kept in mind is that report must be conclusive. The report must contain the facts, their inquiry, the evidence that they have relied upon, and it should not give a vague picture of what might have happened, but should be conclusive of the harassment. All reasons for deriving a conclusion must also be mentioned. All reasons must be recorded properly and must be explained in the report.
All schools are required to release an annual report through their ICCs, so which will contain all details as to how many cases have they actually been referred to, how have they dealt with it, any cases which have actually lingered on for more than 90 days. So all these things will be taken care of by governments and district levels. Then we move on to Section 11, which talks about how do you actually process a complaint. What happens now upon receiving a complaint? What ICC has to see is to see whether or not there is a real action, there is a real offense. That if they feel that there is nothing made out, then they can definitely give a finding that okay, there is no case and no action needs to be taken by the employer. In case they feel there is an action, there is a reasonable cause, then they tell the employer to go file an FIR in police stations, which would in most cases be under Section 509 of ICC, which talks about outraging the modesty of women. And while you're doing this, while you're formulating this, what is extremely important is for you to hear both parties. So upon receiving the complaint, to write down every finding. So the committee will have to pen it down, that this is what we found, and then on each finding you have to record the parties' submission. So what is it that they have to say? In legal terms, we call the right to being heard. So each party should be properly heard. Now, the ICC would have 90 days at max to finish off each complaint. They cannot do more than that. Very important feature is in this case, ICC actually assumes the role of a court. So the power that the court has actually been vested, in asking for people to produce documents or to call out for witnesses or to call out for, certain attendees, like people who would have been present that is what the role of a court here, right? So they can do all of it. They have that kind of power, which in many cases we've seen they're not even aware of.
So as far as the procedure of inquiry is concerned, High Court of Delhi itself says that there is no straitjacket formula that can be allowed, that can be applied. All that has to be kept in mind that the inquiry is conducted in good faith and fair opportunity is given to both sides.
So in case anybody has more questions, we'd be very happy to take them through emails as well.
Right.
And
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.